Thank you for joining us. The governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, Olayemi Cardoso, has said the country recorded a revenue drop of $1.4 billion between 2015 and 2019 after imposing Forex restrictions for import of 43 items. The Apex Bank governor revealed this in his keynote address at the annual dinner of the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria in Lagos. In October, the CBN announced that it had restored the 43 items prohibited from access to the foreign exchange window in 2015. The decision came about 8 years after the bank on 23 June 2015 restricted those who were dealing in the items from accessing Forex at the authorized FX window. The aim of the policy at the time was to reduce pressure on the demand for dollars for importation and to encourage local production of these items. Some of the affected items are rice, cement, margarine, palm kernel, palm oil products, also vegetable oil, meat and processed meat products, vegetables and processed vegetable products, poultry, tomatoes, tomato paste as well, soap and cosmetics, including clothes.
In order to ensure the proper functioning of domestic and foreign currency markets, clear, transparent, and harmonized rules governing market operations are essential. New foreign exchange guidelines and legislation will be developed, and extensive consultations will be conducted with banks and FX operators before implementing any new requirements. We have already witnessed improvements in FX market liquidity in recent weeks as the market responded positively to tranche payments which have been made to 31 banks to clear the backlog of FX forward obligations. We have been subjecting these payments to detailed verification to ensure only valid transactions are honored. In a properly functioning market, it is reasonable to expect significant foreign exchange liquidity with daily trade potentially exceeding $1 billion. We envision that with discipline and focused commitment, foreign exchange reserves can be rebuilt to comparable levels with similar economies. Significantly, the envisioned GDP target will put Nigeria in a position of much more favorable macroeconomic indices, comparable to other economies of $1 trillion and above, with similar population and development characteristics. As with these countries, there is an expectation that driving to this target requires improvements in productivity, employment, and key macroeconomic growth indices. In drawing a comparison with some of these countries, I had in the address to the Bankers Committee audience referred to selected BRICS and Mint economies such as Brazil, Mexico, and Indonesia for their capacity to absorb economic shocks and rebound from cyclical downturn. Significantly, Brazil, with a population of 215 million people, Mexico, with a population of 129 million people, and Indonesia, with a population of 275 million people, which have 2023 unemployment rates at 7.8%, 3.1%, and 5.4% respectively. These are unemployment levels that we in Nigeria should aspire to achieve and with resolve can attain.
Let's discuss these issues further. We have in the studio the Deputy Chairman, House of Reps Committee on National Planning and Economic Development, Clement Jibo. Also, we have an economic development expert, Ogbonna Okoko. Clement, Ogbonna, thank you for joining us on Newsnight.
All right,
thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, let me start with Clement. That was a long speech. That was a rather long speech from the CBN governor. You know, and perhaps his very first elaborate public outing since taking office. Let me start from where he ended. He ended by asking for the collaboration of all stakeholders in restoring the public trust to the CBN. Okay, so what are your recommendations in this?
Well, thank you very much once again for having me. What the CBN governor has just done is in line with what Lee Kuan Yew, one of the famous leaders in Singapore, that made a statement in one of his books titled From Third World to First.
Yeah.
He said we cannot afford to forget that public order, personal security, economic prosperity are not the natural order of things. They depend on ceaseless effort and attention from an honest and effective government that the people must elect. So the CBN governor has set the tempo to bring in every stakeholder to be on board with his policy, with his agenda, with regards to what the president has in store for Nigeria. So that is the first task that he has done, which I would really commend him. Because no matter how lofty policies you have for a nation, if you don't have the cooperation of the stakeholders, it will end in futility. So I must commend him.
Yes, so then we're also looking at, because he enumerated a number of factors and issues to be tackled. But then the bottom line of all this is how he ended it, asking for cooperation to restore public trust. Because at the end of the day, it does not matter how much the CBN is ready to do in national planning and economic development, if there is no public trust in the CBN itself, not much can be done. So how then can maybe I move to Ogbonna? How then can we restore public trust in the CBN?
Now, first things first, there's a new leadership.
Right.
And then the new leadership decides to tell you, this is my direction and the organization I'm leading, this is where we are heading at.
Right.
So everyone should have an expectation, and your expectation should also be tailored within the circumference of what we are willing to dish out. One of the issues we've always had, when it comes to leaders is, being able to have, that personal value proposition, public value proposition. If you're able to evaluate yourself and say, this is what I'm able to bring to the table. Yeah. So that he has done, to say, I've been able to evaluate myself. I've looked at the issues from all ramifications. This is what I'm willing to bring. An honest leadership, and then being able to do that, which is a traditional job of a central bank, not going as far as doing what I'm not supposed to do. I always make this reference anytime I'm talking about the monetary policy and fiscal policy. I use a very strong illustration that everybody resonates with, which is football. Now, on the football pitch, those who are the strikers, those who are up front are the fiscal policy managers. Then the defenders are the monetary policy, guys who are monetary policy managers. So at the time where defenders now begin to want to go and score the goals, you leave your flanks open and anything can happen, and then you now begin to lose. So the success and the victory of any team is largely dependent on what the strikers do than what the defenders do.
But I'm still on you. It says, yes, the CBN governor also says inflation may not go down till 2025. This is not peculiar to Nigeria, so it's not something we should entirely worry about. Yet again, he's saying that the CBN is confident that with more tightening measures, the CBN can better control inflation. But yet again, What do you make of this? How do we cope till 2025?
No, it's really not. Yes, we will bother about how we're going to cope, but the reality is there's a way to solve a problem. If the way to solve a problem will require everybody trekking, so we have to trek to be able to solve the problem. Where the issue will be, based on hindsight, is when you tell everybody to trek, and then at the end of the day, after trekking, and then nothing happens. So the ability to put all on the table to make sure that we solve the problem is actually the most important thing, as far as I'm concerned.
Depleted foreign reserves, Clement, and high inflation rate. So let's look at depleted foreign reserves before I go back to Ogbonna. These are the issues the CBN governor mentioned yesterday. Speak to us about how we can then boost our foreign reserves.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me just add a little thought to your previous question you asked with regards to the CBN governor requesting for
very quickly,
investors' confidence. If you look at what had happened in the last administration, where the CBN introduced the currency redesign policy, where some governors have to go to court and obtain a court judgment, and even the CBN itself and the governor refused to obey the court judgment. So it created a whole lot of disorganization between the management of the CBN and, of course, the Nigerian nation. So for the CBN governor to request and solicit and beg that stakeholders should cooperate with him, and it's a nice thing to do. Then coming back to the depletion of foreign exchange that you've
foreign reserve
that you've talked about. You see, there is a process, just like my colleague here have said, there is a process to building. And all the steps have to be taken first, just like the analogy I normally give. No matter how desperate a couple is in having a baby, they must deliberately wait for at least 9 months. And they must be willing to endure the pains in the labor room. So right now, I will tell you the truth. Every problems, challenges that this country is bedeviling right now did not just start at a go. It is as a result of a whole lot of neglect of several steps, procedures, and implementation that we ought to have taken several years ago. So, are we going to die? No, we need to take the step. Though it's going to be painful, but the steps have been taken. That's my take for that.
You want to have a take on that, Ogbonna?
No,
basically, foreign reserve depletion.
Yes.
How do we shore up our foreign reserves?
You see, you need to be able to earn dollars. As a nation, you can't produce or you can't print dollars. You can only earn dollars. So we now have to, the fiscal policy, structure will now be focused on, we being able to do a lot of import substitution, do backward integration when it comes to production, and then being able to export more to earn more. So as we export and then we earn more dollars, then it makes it a lot easier. It's not rocket science. These are things we must find a way to do, and these are things that can be done through policy directions, through strategic planning. Being able to increase our inflow as regards to foreign direct investment, and then our diaspora inflows. We need to
diaspora remission.
Those diaspora funds we need to actually create create a more productive a structure for those funds to come into investment, not just come into support our families back home. So there has to be some productive structure design that would some investment where these funds can actually go into, and then you begin to see meaningful development as far as those funds are concerned.
Cardoso also spoke about corporate governance of the CBN. You and I know that corporate governance and restoring public trust go hand in glove. But then before I come to corporate governance, I should have merged that with restoring public trust. But let's talk about high unemployment rate. You spoke about bringing down the unemployment rate. And then I'm glad that he didn't fail also to talk about how well Nigeria is doing when it comes to Nollywood, Afrobeat, fashion design and all that. So speak to us about how we can play from the position of strength if we're going to bring down the unemployment rate.
Now, I'm also glad that he said something. He said, in as much as we're going to be doing traditional, central bank job, we're going to create a window to support MSMEs. For me, that gladdened my heart, because that's actually how one of the easiest way globally to absorb people into the labor market.
Right.
When you have a support system, when you create products that will be able to help small and medium scale industries. Now, if you don't do that, because everybody, see, we're talking about some of the ways our FX depletes or disappears is on raw material supply. Because each and every big industry you see in Nigeria, most of them are not manufacturers, they are assembling plants. I always use very popular illustration. The API you see in every paracetamol you take in Nigeria is actually 95% imported. So what we do is we couple Panadol and paracetamol in Nigeria. The API, the active pharmaceutical ingredient, is gotten from India and China. So at the end of the day, something as small as candy is actually still being imported. It's made up of glucose syrup, coloration, and flavoring. Those three things are gotten from China, Turkey, and India. So if everything is gotten from abroad, so those are the things that put pressure on our FX. So at the end of the day, so until we now begin to have small and medium enterprises that will be able to produce glucose syrup. Glucose syrup comes from cassava. It comes from potato. It comes from yam. And then there's no factory in the entire nation where they make glucose syrup. That's to mention but a few. Ethanol. These are things that come from cassava. So until we begin to have, a proper plan on how to support, those in agriculture, to add value to agriculture, and then those are the things that will now fall into our production line, and then it makes life a lot easier. So at the end of the day, if you do any plan that does not support the small scale industries, you have not done anything. You have not done anything. You don't have product to support agriculture. You have not done anything at the end of the day.
Before I come back yet again to corporate governance, he mentioned something in that regard as well. He talked about bringing down the interest rate so that entrepreneurs, SMEs, MSMEs can better get funding for their businesses. So what do you make of that?
It's still in the same line. I always say there are two ways these monies can come. It can come from the commercial bank, and it can also come from the government finance institutions. This one is governed by, commercial banks are governed by shareholders, and this one is actually governed by stakeholders. So the ones that are governed by the stakeholders, the government finance institutions, those are institutions that you can actually, push your interventions through and then make sure that they happen. Yes, the central bank initially, they had a plan. Some of us, applauded the plan, but it's just that they were not working with the fiscal policy managers to make sure that those things become sustainable. You don't become, you're not a regulator, and then at the same time you're a lender, you are creating institutions to do the anchor borrowers. There has to be a way. You need to be able to, feel the pulse of the manufacturers, feel the pulse of the people, so you'll be able to design a product and then it will work well. We have issues of venture capital. There has to be a deliberate attempt to create a venture capital system that will help jumpstart transactions, where people with their good ideas, even in their villages in Ondo State, in Isenyi, can wake up one day and say, okay, I want to do this, and then I'll be able to get funds to do it. Even if I don't have family members to support me initially to do my bootstrapping, I should be able to walk into some organization, and the organization say, okay, I'm going to become shareholder in your business, but I'm going to provide ABCD amount of money. These are systems that you must create.
Ogbonna, you see, funding is not the only challenge. Bootstrapping is easy when there's security. You mentioned insecurity as well. We'll come to that. But Clement, let's talk about corporate governance. Because the CBN governor is not going to be having a walk in the park, He intends to carry everyone along. That's why he's asking for all stakeholders to cooperate with him. And then he's saying that corporate governance will be revived. What are your thoughts?
Fantastic. That is where the Committee on National Planning and Economic Development of the House of Representatives in the 10th Assembly comes in very handy. You see, it was Benjamin Franklin that said, if you fail to plan, you are actually planning to fail. Obviously, right now, there are laws, there are policies of government that needs to be revived, need to be dusted and implemented for it to work. I recall what the Minister of Solid Mineral, Honorable Dare, said. He said, gone are the days where raw materials would not be added value to in Nigeria? The solid mineral sector. That is one of the viable sectors that needs to be revived.
No, corporate
Absolutely.
governance is what we're talking about.
That is the point. That is the point I'm coming to. For you to drive an inclusive corporate governance, all the stakeholders must be on board. And where National Assembly comes in with laws. What are those laws that we need to revive, need to inject into the system, bring into the psyche of all the stakeholders to be aware that this law is life, even the international community to know. One of it is what I call technology transfer. If you look at Nigeria, it's littered, the landscape of Nigeria is littered with lithium. What is lithium made of? What can lithium be made from? Battery, cell phone, every devices that we have in Nigeria, that's a solar, electricity, they drive with battery. Can we now evolve a law that says, look, no battery will be imported into Nigeria again, maybe for the next 10, 15 years. Let us revive our lithium industry to produce battery. From National Assembly, you have bought the entire sector of that into the corporate governance to drive what? To drive what my colleague now said, revenue generation, reducing unemployment, creating employment for a teeming population. It is not going to be a walk in the park. Obviously, the process needs to be kick-started. And that is where it begins from.
Thank you. Ogbonna, let me come back to you because we don't have the luxury of time. The CBN governor also talked about the catalytic role of the CBN supporting the unbanked and private sector participation in boosting our economic growth. I need your suggestions on this.
Suggestions as in you want me to help the central bank, design strategies that they should use. Anyway, that was just an enlightenment. So, suggesting will be first things first. There's this the hand-holding mechanism. We need to have, we need to engage a bit more. Like I spoke about the raw material supply strategy. Now, is all encompassing. We need to look at infrastructure development. How are we going to get our infrastructure in place? Because, I mean, these are things that will require, see how goods will move from farm gate to where they will be needed and all of that. So these are the things we must invest money in. Then I talked about funding. Funding, yes, is an issue. Whether we like it or not, we need to be able to create products that will not have a mix of commercial lending system also and have a development finance lending system, because I mean they can't go hand in hand. Yes, they can't go hand in hand because, like I said earlier, they depend on two different policy framework for it to work, because you can't tell me you want to give me money in Bank of Industry and you want me to go to a commercial bank to get you a bank guarantee. Although those things are being worked upon to make sure that those policies change. So if we have that done, then most of the fears that they allege when it comes to lending, without any form of collateral, they say people can take this money and move away. So that also brings identification into it. So we have to have a robust identification system where before you actually disappear with somebody's money, it becomes a tall order. So anywhere you go to, you'll be found. So I mean, there's so much that can happen at the same time, but it's just that the wheel of development is everything is connected to everything. So you don't isolate development from one point. You have to look at it holistically.
Right.
So there has to be that engagement where everybody sits, and then we'll look at what role everybody will be playing, and then making sure that we bring support and then bring to bear that which we are looking for.
But I almost forgot to ask you about corporate governance, because communication and carrying people along is essential. Communication between an institution and the public, corporate governance. Speak to us about this.
Now you can actually engage people. So that's where engaging people, frequent, providing that platform for engagement, interaction, actually, pays, will pay you a whole lot. Even within the system itself, I mean, the central bank itself, the channel of communication, how things are being, how policies come out and all of that. So it's something that must be, properly organized, and then again, interacting with the public. So, and then, like I said, knowing where your own role stops, and then where the fiscal policy managers will come in. And then the good thing is that the two people, the coordinating minister and the central bank governor, I think from what I understand, they've worked together, in some way. So it will be easy for them to connect and then understand each other. I think that's where everybody's drawing the line. I said, this is where my role is, and this is is where I'm supposed to, stop, and then you take over from there.
A big thank you to Clement Jibo. I want to say thank you to Deputy Chairman, House Committee on National Planning and Economic Development. Thank you very much. Ogbona Okuku is an economist. A big thank you to you for coming on Newsnight. We hope to have you gentlemen sometime soon again for more elaborate discussion. Thank you for coming.
Right.